at the American University in Cairo, and very proud to be the founding director of the Access to Knowledge for Development Center at the AUC School of Business. I work with a wonderful team. The webinar here is a part of our activities as the Middle East and North Africa Hub of the Feminist AI Research Network, an initiative of A+ Alliance, and shout out to our colleagues from the A+ Alliance. As I mentioned, our center is at AUC School of Business. We launched actually 13 years ago to the day almost, February 7, 2010. So we're a team, we're 13 years old. We have been working on research that impacts policy making, the purpose of impacting policy making in Egypt, the Middle East, and Africa in the area of knowledge, technology, and development, inclusion. And at the moment, we are engaged in 4 research tracks. One in no special order is responsible data and artificial intelligence for development in the MENA region, where we are creating an AI observatory for MENA, for everything that's being done in this area by us and colleagues all over. We're also, on a second project is looking at new forms of work that is digitally enabled in the digital economy. So we're looking at gig workers in the MENA region. We're also looking at cloud workers in the MENA region and how this is portrayed or not in the data landscape and hence in policy making and inclusion, social protection. Third, we're also the North African hub of the Open African Innovation Research Network. Great partners, we've been working with them for over 10 years now. Last but not least, we are, as I mentioned, the MENA hub for feminist AI, which is very close to our hearts, all of us. Let me just say a few words about today's session. As you know, and as I was discussing with my students just the last hour in our digital economy course, look, AI has the potential of exacerbating inequalities, but it can also be turned around to be utilized consciously to promote development, inclusion, and mitigation of inequalities. Feminism comes at the heart of this. Feminism as transformational. So we think of feminist AI as technology and that is actually brings a change, not only to women. It is feminism as inclusion, not only for women, but for all. Again, in the earlier discussion of AI and SDGs, we're talking about how AI has the potential of achieving several of the SDGs, not just gender equality, but also reducing inequalities, affecting education, health, well-being, even the environment. We're looking at feminist AI in its transformational form and what it can do, the potential of actually bringing change and inclusion for all in the MENA region, which is really the spirit of what we're doing in here. I will just, for a moment, I'd like Nadine Waheba, my colleague, our associate director, to share a few words about our call for proposals as the MENA hub for feminist AI, and we strongly encourage you to join us and be part of this work. So Nadine, I pass it on to you to say a few words about our call for proposals before I move on to introduce our wonderful speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nagla, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Like Dr. Nagla said, we're very proud to be the Middle East and North Africa hub of the Feminist AI Research Project, which is an initiative of the A+ Global Alliance. And right before I speak about the call, we'll share a very short video, which gives everyone an idea about the A+ Alliance.
Khadija, I think the volume, we have a problem with the volume. Khadija, the volume is not, the voice is not working. I think we have a problem with the voice, even the sound, even though we tried it just before the session. No, I think we just, we can maybe, Nadine, you can mention the call for papers while Khadija fixes the video, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, sure. All right. So like I said, we are the MENA hub of the FAIR or the Feminist AI Research Project, which is an initiative of the A+ Global Alliance. There are also other hubs for the network in Southeast Asia and in Latin America. And today, this is our second network meeting. So what is the A+ Alliance? The A+ Alliance is a network of technologists and academics and activists who are working together to ensure that new algorithmic systems that are developed do not embed already biased systems into our collective futures in order to help and work towards and ensure a more fair, just, and inclusive future for all. And the FAIR Network and the A+ Alliance are supported by Canada's International Development Research Centre, or IDRC. So yeah, the project has recently announced a call for expressions of interest with funding, and the call is open until the 14th of February. So what is the title of the call? The call is titled Incubating Feminist AI, Calls for Expression of Interest, Algorithmic Decision Making Systems. So just to quickly recap, like Dr. Nagla was saying, what feminist AI, what do we mean, or what is feminist AI? It is artificial intelligence that is harnessed to deliver equality outcomes, and it is designed with inclusion at its core. And it aims to create new opportunities for the proactive and innovative correction of the inequities in economic and social allocation, and builds on and harnesses feminist data collection and deployment. So like I said, the call is open to researchers in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and in MENA, and we hope that our webinar today helps and encourages some of our MENA community to apply. The call is looking for interdisciplinary teams to work together, so teams of social scientists, technologists, civil society groups from various different fields. So what will the teams be working on? Khadija, if you can go to the slide with the timeline. So first, the teams will be working on, I'll get to the topic, I just want to take you through the process quickly. First, the teams will be working on a proof of concept, which is the current phase that's open, which will be, it's the expression of interests. Then, if these are accepted, the teams will have 6 months to develop a paper. And then once again, if the paper moves on to the next stage, there'll be further funding to turn this into a prototype and possibly a pilot. So what are these different teams going to work on? We're applied feminist AI research and solutions to ensure that technology is co-created with problem definition and solution design of these affected vulnerable communities at the heart of it. So to correct and meet, so not just to meet their needs, but also to correct the biases that they have been facing. And like we said, inclusion at the core, especially of women, but inclusion in a larger sense. So in other words, we're looking for proofs of concept for new models of algorithmic decision making that could make the allocation and distribution of, for example, social services more equitable through the creation and or use, obviously, of big data. So I'll just give you some examples, and all of this information, if I may ask Khadija to please post the link to the call for proposals in the chat. All of this information is detailed on the A+ Alliance website, but I'm just giving you a quick overview here. So some of the examples of areas of social service allocation are like school allocation, aid to families with children, conditional cash transfers, pension allocation, as well as other areas of interest for the call are sector-specific innovation, education, health, financial credit scoring, and so forth. So what would an expression of interest need to show? It needs to demonstrate a necessary, innovative, and new model or new way of thinking or conceptualizing AI that puts inclusion, like we've been saying, at the core. So not just to include women, but also women or marginalized groups, but to ensure that their interests are secured and their opportunities to gain benefit from these applications or this use of AI is maximized. So I'll just give you a few examples that are again detailed in the call. One example that the call mentions is, for example, the development of a data set that is intended for a specific machine learning use, and it can be used to train AI models, for example, for medical service allocation or university or school allocation for women. Another example is the development of a proof of concept, an AI proof of concept that aims to enhance the inclusion of women in different social programs or in different policies, or that seeks to use AI to model, for example, social inequities to inform policies. For example, again, teams are encouraged to think of their own ideas, but these are just like guiding ideas. For example, a team would develop a model to show how greater financial support for students in impoverished areas would lead to better academic performance. Or one that shows a link between the lack of healthcare services in a given area would lower productivity of workers, and so forth. Also, another area of interest for the call is with the governments more and more are beginning to use AI technologies for social policy making. So the call is also interested in expressions of interest for ideas to advance research on impact assessments or understandings of the implications of AI being used in different social policy contexts. And here, of course, the context of a region like the MENA region would be very significant. And the idea is with the intention of proposing relevant shifts in the methodologies and understandings. And again, there are a lot of examples in the call, but one example would be, for example, for allocation of healthcare services. If systems that are deployed rely on like the availability of previous medical history for the patients, then a lot, you can imagine, I mean, in the region, a lot of rural women or urban poor where they don't have medical records, they definitely be excluded from initiatives of the sort. Like I said, all the information and about the call, the details and the application is available on the A+ Alliance website. I know I've asked Khadija to post it in the chat. And if you have any questions, I think, Khadija, we could also post our email and the A+ Alliance website's email. I don't know if we have our video ready. Do we have it? If not, I can also go over those slides with the key info again, and then we can finally get to Dr. Manal.
So Khadija, do you want to try the video? If it works this time, let's see. No, I think we have a problem with the link. Okay, why don't I suggest the following. Khadija, would you kindly post the link to the video in the chat? And if I may ask people to have that, to get hold of that link, and you can maybe watch it later. Sorry about that. This is a technical glitch. We've tested it before the meeting and it worked. Sorry about that. So Nadine,
Khadija, we can look at those slides very quickly. It'll take a minute, and then we can move on. Can we go back to them? It's okay, take your time.
I think if I may just say a couple of words until the slides come out. One of the really important, aspects of for the call for papers, and I really invite people for proposals, is to bring research and prototypes and pilots that come from the region. A major, as you will all agree with me, a major limitation is that we usually, the models and data and these research usually comes from the global north. We want to have research that is embedded in our context-related research from our part of the world. So I hope that our audience will respond positively to the call for proposals, and I look forward to receiving more from you. Back to you, Nadine and Khadija. Let's see what you've got. Go ahead.
Sure, Khadija, can you just take us back very quickly? Yeah, all right. So this is just to recap. This is the title of the call, Incubating Feminist AI, Call for Expressions of Interest, Algorithmic Decision Making Systems. We're looking for interdisciplinary teams, like Dr. Nagla was saying, from the region, and that's really where the added value comes in, especially if it's data sets from the region to train the models and so forth. Where this meeting is for the MENA hub, but also, of course, the call is open for applications in Latin America and Southeast Asia, and it's open until the 14th of February. Khadija, sorry. The slide. Yeah, like we were saying, interdisciplinary teams of social scientists, activists, technologists, civil society, and so forth. We can move on. Yeah, and again, just to recap, this is the timeline. The current phase is for the expressions of interest, and then followed by developing a paper, and if that is successful, into a prototype and possibly a pilot. And at different stages of the call, the selected projects will receive funding and mentorship from the FAIR project leadership and the A+ Alliance leadership as well. Khadija, do you want to go to the last one? It's just a slide with, this is just a slide with the different partners, the different partner organizations. Yeah. And Dr. Nagla, I would turn back to you now.
Thank you very much, Nadine and Khadija. Thanks everyone for listening. And let me then, without further ado, introduce our wonderful speaker and get to I look forward to listening to her. We are very lucky and fortunate to have our longtime friend and partner, Dr. Manal Jalloul, from Lebanon. Dr. Jalloul is an artificial intelligence expert, keynote speaker, and entrepreneur. She's an NVIDIA Deep Learning Institute certified instructor and university ambassador, striving to democratize AI education in the MENA region. She is the co-founder and chief executive officer of AI Lab, an artificial intelligence consultancy and training company providing specialized hand-on training and consultancy services in the fields of AI, accelerated computing, and data analytics to the industry. AI Lab is the certified delivery partner of NVIDIA DLI in EMEA. Through AI Lab, Dr. Jalloul strives to drive the adoption of AI among the startup ecosystem. Dr. Jalloul is a member of the advisory board of the International Group of AI, IGOAI, serving as Lebanon's country advisor. She's also the executive member of the Global AI Ethics Institute expert team, which aims to build a strong and fair global governance system for AI. Dr. Jalloul was named among NVIDIA's top distinguished instructors for 2021. She's the recipient of ERSA NVIDIA Award for Best Young Entrepreneur in 2013 and Jamal Abdel Nasser Award for Academic Excellence in 2007. She is a public keynote speaker, delivered speeches, talks, and panel discussions about AI at international meetups and conferences. She's also a lecturer, researcher at the American University of Beirut. Her research interests lie in the fields of AI, computer vision, 3D printing, and parallel computing. She has several peer-reviewed publications in international journals and conferences. Our friend Manal is here to tell us about algorithmic decision making, ADM, examples of biases, how to correct and mitigate them, feminism and inclusion in MENA, unpacking concepts and call for proposals, and just, hopefully this links to our title with a call for proposals. So looking forward to learning from Manal as always. The floor is yours, Manal. Thank you very much for joining us. Tfaddali.
Thank you, Dr. Najla, and thank you, A2K4D. Thank you for this invitation. It's always a pleasure to participate in these very insightful events. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So the title of my talk today will be about algorithmic decision making and gender inclusion in MENA. So before I start, I have to say that unfortunately the MENA region has the world's lowest rates of female economic participation, and despite the increasing levels of education among women in our region, this figure has been resistant to change. And there are several challenges to women entering and staying in the labor force, such as patriarchal norms and stereotypes, lack of childcare facilities, lack of opportunity, workplace harassment, inadequate transport, legal restriction to labor rights, among many other reasons. So just sharing some facts and figures here, like the Arab region has the world's lowest rate of female labor force participation. We have only 18.4% of female labor force participation as compared to the male labor force participation, which rates at 77%. Our rate of female unemployment is 15.6%, which is 3 times higher than the world average. Women in managerial positions are low in the region with only 11% as compared to the world average of 27.1%. Unpaid child work and child care work result in women spending almost 5 times more hours than men on unpaid work. So gender equality is actually a fundamental human right, not only in the region, but in the entire world. And it is not only for the sake of women, but it is a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. Accordingly, the United Nations SDG goals has established goal number 5 for gender equality. And in this goal, we have 9 targets and 14 indicators. 6 of the targets are outcome-oriented, looking at ending discrimination against women and girls everywhere, ending violence and exploitation, increasing value of unpaid work, promoting shared domestic responsibilities, ensuring full participation of women in leadership and decision-making positions, and ensuring access to universal reproductive rights and health. And the means for achieving these targets are fostering equal rights to economic resources, prosperity, property ownership, financial services for women, promoting empowerment of women through technology, and adopting, strengthening policies and enforcing legislation for gender equality. So we are living nowadays in the era of AI and emerging technologies. So the question that we are all asking ourselves, where does AI come to the picture, and how does it impact gender inclusion in our region? So we're going to specifically look at algorithmic decision making in general, where AI is actually part of it, and start by unpacking concepts, explaining what ADM means, and then we're going to shed the light on how it can impact gender equality, both by posing some risks as well as the potential for actually mitigating the gender gap that we're actually witnessing today. So let's start by explaining algorithmic decision making, what it is about. So while algorithms are hardly a recent innovation, they are nevertheless increasingly involved today in systems that are used to support decision making. So these systems that we're going to refer to as ADM systems often rely on the analysis of huge amounts of data in order to infer correlations, or more generally to derive information that are useful to make decisions. So these decision-making algorithms would ingest problem-relevant information from the environment and accordingly produce an action. You may think of an AI algorithm, for example, that takes in patient vital needs and accordingly outputs a diagnosis or assists doctors in giving diagnoses, or a stock trading system that synthesizes daily market prices and suggests, for example, stock buys. So in these systems, these systems assume varying degrees of human intervention, and they are in general categorized into two categories. We may have semi-automatic systems, which assist humans in making decisions. For example, an ADM that can assist doctors in identifying diseases in clinical settings where the data is complex and sparse, and help them to make diagnoses. Or we may have systems, AI systems, that can be used to take fully automated decisions where humans are completely out of the loop, as in automated metro systems, for example. So very often these systems are used to make predictions or to estimate risks. So the AI systems or algorithmic design, the decision-making systems could be categorized into three categories, actually. We may have ADM systems that aim at improving general knowledge or technology. And in this case, we use algorithms to generate new knowledge, generally through the analysis of complex phenomena. And algorithms are crucial in this context since they can be used to analyze very large data sets in order to extract knowledge. They can, for example, help us improve climate forecasts, detect diseases, or discover new viruses. So these systems are used to make decisions which have a global impact rather than on specific individuals, but an impact on the society as a whole. The second category of ADM systems aim at improving or developing new digital services. So applications of this category are used to help make predictions, recommendations, or decisions in various areas, such as information, finance, planning, logistics. These services aim at optimizing one or several specific criteria, such as time, energy, costs, relevance of information, etc. For example, navigation services that we all use, such as Google Maps, that assist us in navigation, or new services and platforms that perhaps propose accommodations similar to Airbnb, or transportation alternatives such as Uber that did not exist a few years ago, but now, like, all of us are heavily relying on these technology, these applications. Smart home applications are another example of ATM systems that are being deployed to improve comfort, optimize energy consumption. Also, we can have services that are being deployed to improve logistics work through a proprietary algorithm, for example, optimal product placement in stores, and that considers some of the answers to road constructions, for example, or for example, applications or that will consider data related to the frequency of refuse of questionnaire collection. We may have some algorithms that target data like real-time auctions, or security, like automated detection of vulnerabilities in computer systems. So all of these examples target to optimize existing services. The third category of ATM are ATM systems that are integrated within cyber-physical systems. So within this concept, these systems are used to provide autonomy to physical objects by limiting human supervision. So examples are autonomous cars, robots, or weapons. Autonomous cars are being experimented with all over the world, and algorithms actually are used in order to control how these vehicles operate, and they make decisions on behalf of drivers. And the main goals of using these autonomous cars are essentially to make roads safer and optimize connection times. Similarly, autonomous robots are being developed to help or replace humans in performing difficult physical tasks at work or at home. Examples include robots used in factory chains, domestic robots that provide services to humans, or robots on the battlefield. So decision-making algorithms are increasingly used in many areas, such as information, e-commerce, recommendation systems, employment, health, justice, policing, banking, and insurance, and many other fields. They could provide enormous benefit for individuals and for organizations, both in the public and private sectors. They can lead to better informed decisions, to the discovery of previously unknown correlations, to better patient treatment. However, on the other hand, they do pose a lot of risks, and they give a rise to a variety of risks such as discrimination, unfairness, manipulation, and privacy breaches. So, and most of the literature actually explicitly discusses the relationship between AI and when it comes to the discussion between AI and gender equality, all the research and most of the research currently focuses on bias and the risks that these systems might pose to the problem of gender equality. And indeed, AI does poses some challenges to gender equality, and these challenges rise from several reasons. And primarily, the first reason lies in the fact that there are bias in the data that are used to train and create these systems. So all AI systems need data. Data is per definition based on historical events. Data will thus often reflect the biases that exist or still exist towards certain groups. In some cases, the data is biased due to historical norms and gender discrimination. And one example is shown here, like if you try Google Translate and try to translate from Hungarian to English, for example. Hungarian is a pronoun-free language. It means it doesn't have pronoun, doesn't use he or she. So if you try to translate the phrases, I'm sure you can understand Hungarian. However, just telling you, the phrases on the left do not contain any kind of pronouns. However, if you apply these phrases to Google Translate, interestingly, like, you know, the adjective beautiful was associated with the pronoun she, right? Clever was associated with he. On the other hand, reads, you know, Google associated it with he. She washes the dishes while he builds. She sews while he teaches. She cooks while he is researching. She is raising a child while he is playing music. She's a cleaner and he's a politician. He makes a lot of money while she is baking a cake. He is a professor and she is an assistant. Well, unfortunately, you know, this clearly shows the gender bias that is being implemented and inherent in these AI systems that we are using frequently. Now, the reason why this bias is inherent in this model is, you know, it is very simple. The reason is not in the models themselves. The reason lies in the bias in the data that these systems were trained on. As a matter of fact, for training these systems, we usually use data from the internet, right? And if you go to the internet, you will find out that, most websites, most frequently, the adjective beautiful is associated with she, while, politician is he, right? And researcher is he, while baking is she. So the data itself is biased, and that's why the models that came up out of this data, train such systems, came up to be biased, and they aggravated the gender inequality that was inherently stereotyped in our communities. Well, the second reason, or the second challenge that these ADMs pose to gender equality lies in bias in the design itself, right? So, and this is actually called implicit bias in AI. And here the bias is not in the data, but the bias lies in the design of the AI systems themselves. And it actually renders the whole decision-making system unfair at the very first step, when the coder or the designer unconsciously designs machine learning models based on their own stereotypes. And one very common cited example is that cars have actually been designed by men, increasing the likelihood that female drivers are injured in accidents. And this is a very known statistic. A woman is 47% more likely to be seriously injured and 17% more likely to die in a car accident compared to men. And the reason behind this statistics is that the cars has been designed by men for male bodies, ignoring the physical attributes of women's bodies, even teenagers, disabled, obese, and elderly for that matter. So this is a clear example of bias in the design, where the design process itself was being done by men, right? And as a result, it reflected their own stereotype, which resulted in aggravating the gender inequality. So the question that we're all asking ourselves, how can we correct the bias? Well, there are a lot of examples where AI development has gone wrong due to gender bias in design and data. However, there are ways to diminish this. And one of the methods to do that is, first of all, by ensuring that teams that develop the solutions are diverse teams with multiple perspectives represented. Number two, the training data itself should be representative, and the development team needs to reflect on whether something is missing from the data set that may affect the result. So we need to inspect the data set, make sure it's diverse enough before actually using it to train our model. It's also important to identify processes to test and monitor for possible bias during the development and use of the solution. So teams need to reflect on the AI solution's impact on the potential user groups and whether they may be individuals or groups disproportionately affected by negative consequences. And lastly, we could actually use AI itself in order to help reduce gender inequality. So let's see how this can actually be done. So the first thing we're going to look at is how we can use AI and algorithmic decision making in general for the purpose of equal distribution of power. And this is the first target of the SDG number 5. So one of the crucial part in ensuring gender equal representation and access to formal power and influence is to analyze, number one, recruitment processes in all sectors of society. A well-developed AI tool could give organizations support when recruiting new staff to overcome gender unequal structures and norms. And one example actually is a tool, Fa+ir, which is a talent matching platform that uses AI to remove bias across gender and ethnicity and do predictions of what candidate that is best fit. And it analyzes recruitment processes since recruiters decide who ends up in the power positions. Another, a very good AI tool is an AI tool that can hide any forms of ethnicity and the indicators of ethnicity or gender from the CVs itself that are, for example, uploaded to LinkedIn, so that when recruiters look at them, they will not have this, bias in the judgment in the first step. Another example of how AI can actually ensure equal distribution of power is using AI to analyze and address influence and power itself. So AI could actually be used to analyze the opportunity to speak in meeting rooms, conferences, political contexts from a gender perspective. It could map who speaks and when, interruptions, and how people in a room react on speeches given by a man or a woman. And an interesting application is called the Fa+ir AI, which is a project that aims to develop an automated tool designed for detecting norms and stereotypes in popular culture by analyzing speaking time, appearance and emotion recognition, and descriptions of character. And the purpose of this tool is to increase awareness of how men, women, and minorities are portrayed in movies, for example, in order to enable audiences to make informed choices. So, although these solutions might not directly affect gender equality, however, they shed the light on the norms and invisible barriers that are particularly important to address and make visible. So this tool could easily be applied to any kind of meeting or conference or meetup, or even movies and plays and any content, in order to measure the participation of men as compared to women, and how the audience is reacting to both, and to shed the light to any possible gender inequality or gender bias that is present. The second goal, which was highlighted by SG number 5, targets economic equality. So the purpose of the goal is to provide equal opportunities for paid labor and economic independence to men and women. And the goal includes more equal allocation of financial resources between men and women, return on capital, and access to venture capital and investments. So AI could actually be used for gender equal funding. And an example is that AI can potentially assist in creating a more gender equal process, remove bias in assessment processes. An example is actually an application called Rikara, which is an AI prototype that aims to ensure gender equal learning algorithms in financiers' decisions. And this project explores how AI and innovations in AI can reduce unconscious bias for gender equality in access to finance. Another example is that AI could be used to improve gender equal recruitment by using algorithms that attempt to remove factors such as gender, national origin, age, etc. from the initial evaluation process, and thus remove some of the unconscious bias. And an example is also an application called unbiased.io, which removes faces and names from LinkedIn profiles. Another application called Entilo anonymizes interviewing by removing all indications of gender and race. Another possibility is to use AI to achieve gender equal salaries. And an example is also another software called Fa+ir, which is a software developed to analyze, clarify wage differences in pay levels at a company, for example. This software uses machine learning to analyze large amounts of salary statistics from a company, with the aim of producing quick and simple reports that clarify any available gender differences. The third goal regards equal education and to ensure equal access to education for both men and women, and to contradict unequal opportunities and conditions related to education. So, and this goal covers the educational system from preschool to higher education. And one example is using AI to measure engagement in the classroom. For example, we could use computer vision technology to examine head poses, and facial expressions could be used to examine student engagements to improve teaching strategies. AI could be used to identify any form of cyberbullying. For example, an interesting application called Identity Guard. It's a parental control app with natural language processing that allows to understand and categorize what individuals are sending and receiving. This solution can help to monitor children's social media, flag any potential cyberbullying or signs of self-harm, for example. The fourth goal that we're going to look at is equal health, and ensuring equal health regardless of gender. And again, the purpose of this goal is to ensure that both men and women and all kinds of groups have equal access to healthcare and equal opportunities to live a healthy life. So AI in this respect can be used to ensure gender equal health. So technology can be developed and used to analyze large amounts of data to better understand why and how diseases develop. Versions of image analysis being used to assist doctors when diagnosing breast cancer, for example, and other diseases that usually with higher percentage women get them than men. AI can promote reproductive health, for example. Grace Health is a project that develops an AI-powered chatbot aimed at women with the goal of assisting users to better understand their fertility, answer questions about contraceptions and other hygiene issues. AI could also be used to uncover discrimination in the healthcare system. So AI solutions could be used to analyze large amounts of healthcare data, to discover there are systematic differences, and perhaps showing whether there is a knowledge gap in gender-specific care. And the fifth and final goal targets men's violence against women. And the target of this goal is to ensure equal rights and opportunities to bodily integrity for men and women in all groups. And the goal concerns physical, psychological, sexual violence against women, as well as threats concerning violence against women in general. So AI can assist to the risks of domestic abuse by using computer vision. For example, we can detect any potential violence, physical violence against women, flag alarms, or even call the police station automatically. AI could be used to identify human trafficking, and very nice application that's being deployed in US and Canada called Spotlight. It is helping agencies across the world to find child victims of human trafficking. And what it does is that it uses a range of computer vision and NLP capabilities to identify thousands of victims of sex trafficking. It extracts information from images, tries to find victims of trafficking. So in general, we believe that the ADM does have a lot of potential in order to solve gender inequality issues. However, to be able to do that, it needs to be enabled by following many procedures. First of all, we need synergic cooperation among problem owners, entrepreneurs, AI engineers, and gender study experts. We need a competent and diverse development team. We need a structure for economic incentives. We need norm-critical perspectives in the development process. We need access to relevant data, and we need finally regulation to enable innovation. Well, I'm gonna just speak briefly about our efforts at AI Lab in order to bridge gender inequality, or to bridge the digital gap in general in the region. And so AI Lab, as Dr. Najla mentioned, we are a training center. We foster AI adoption in the region. And in that respect, we are conducting a lot of upskilling trainings and workshops in artificial intelligence and data science in the MENA with the purpose of bridging the digital gap and allowing more women and more people from diverse groups in order to be equipped with the skills of AI in order to have active participation in building our digital economy. So that's just a glimpse of some of the trainings that we've been conducting the past few years across the MENA region. So just in conclusion, there is a great potential in using ADM in order to solve gender-related issues. However, we need to support that by formulating missions based on gender equality policy goals, creating platforms for knowledge exchange, by collaborating for making data available. So finally, I'm just kind of going to sum it up by saying we have to acknowledge the bias. However, on the other hand, we need to focus also on communicating and realizing the potential of AI and ADM systems in achieving gender equality and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manal. There's just so much in there, and I have tons of questions. So we have 15 minutes. So what I'm going to try to do is I will try and summarize the topics, under the, I just read you a few questions, and if you can comment, if you can, and any questions that are not answered, I'll make sure to send them to you by email, and please ask you to, address, even if briefly. So very quickly, I tried to put them together under topics. So one of them says, I now will summarize, since AI is created and constructed by human beings, how can we expect AI to be gender bias free? Meanwhile, the creators of the entire AI system, are in fact gender biased. So this is also, there is another question, how do we guarantee algorithmic decision-making systems do not repeat the same biases of human decisions? What about, so this is one section about the algorithms reflecting human biases. This is one. Another group of questions relate to data. So basically something, in a similar vein, something about how can we ensure that data sets reflect the needs of society, which they were developed and collected, MENA in our case. So how can we have a ground up design of data sets, a bunch of questions about data sets. So it's the algorithm bias itself reflecting human bias, question about data sets, raising awareness for policymakers, getting policymakers to be engaged with this, and maybe just a fourth keyword is breach of privacy. To what extent are we breaching privacy when we look at norms of analyzing speaking time, appearance, etc. in one of the apps, and how are we addressing this, and how can it, and it's a question about ethics, basically, how can it be adopted, the worry about being adopted for unethical interests, such as exploitation and corrupt governments. I mean, there's so much in there. Let me just give you those keywords. So there's the algorithm reflecting bias, data biases already that are there, and collection of data, the ethical aspects, and basically, policy making. So what do you make of all of this together? Sorry, it's too much.
I know. So we have actually shed the light on these exact concepts in the presentation. So we've mentioned that there is bias. There's a problem or risk of bias in the design and the data of AI systems that's used to train these systems. And it is the result of the stereotypes that are inherently present in the data itself. However, the way to get out of this is perhaps, and first of all, to have a diverse team that develops AI. We cannot have only, the perspective on only one group, such as men, designing these systems. We need diverse teams that where we have representation from diverse groups. And even in the data, we need to ensure that the data is diverse enough. And this is what tech companies are doing now. And now, like when they know that the problem and the risk of bias in AI, and accordingly, in order to mitigate that, they put a lot of effort in studying the data itself, trying to using it to train AI systems. So as a matter of fact, we can use AI in order to detect bias in data, right? And we can use by detecting if data is well represented of all groups. We have to test AI systems prior to deployment, and this is a very, very important step before we actually use these systems at a wide scale. These systems have to be heavily tested to make sure that they don't result in any bias of treatment, and in order to correct the bias in the data itself, in the stereotypes, in our visions, how we deal with things, we can use unbiased AI systems, as we said. Like, for example, in the hiring process, if we use an AI that hides any private information from the application process, it can actually help to remove inherent bias from the recruiters themselves. So here AI can assist in removing our human bias or even overcoming it. So things are not instantaneous. However, it's a process, it's a long-term process. But what we aim to say in this presentation is that everybody, most of the research, the literature, only shed the lights on when it comes to bias, on the risks and the potential of AI to exacerbate existing biases. However, what we need to recognize here is that, on the other hand, it does have a lot of potential to mitigate the bias, to help solve it, and even to remove our own human bias that is inherently present due to the stereotypes in our society.
Thank you, Manal. A couple of questions also address the question of the law and the legal legislative infrastructure, and again, and policymakers. How do you see this in MENA region? How can we make a difference in the awareness of policymakers and the legislative infrastructure around those issues?
Exactly. So one thing that should be done in our region is to have data-driven policy-making process. So rather than relying on individuals' point of views in the policy-making process, we need to rely on data-driven research. So data has to be gathered. We can use AI in order to extract insights from the data and accordingly drive the policy-making process. So there's a great need to gather data concerning different aspects of our society, use AI to extract insights, to extract correlations, to extract drawbacks that can be solved by policies and legislations, or even use data, gather data in order to measure the impact of policies on societies. So whenever a policy comes out, we need to gather data on the impact of that policy on the individuals from diverse groups. And accordingly, we go back and we modify the policy in case it had negative impact, in case it has positive impact, So this has to be in a loop, right? This data-driven policy making has to be done in a loop where we always gather data, extract insights and modified policies accordingly, so that this is based on actual impact on individuals and on our societies.
Great, and I think your answer also addresses the question here about the women in informal economies, because once the data set is more, is transparent and it's inclusive, then you can actually include people who are normally outside the radar of national statistical data landscapes. There's a question about ChatGPT. You mentioned services such as navigation services and Uber. What do you think about ChatGPT? That's a big fashion today. ChatGPT, is it a new e-service as well, or is it a replacement for human professions?
Well, I don't see it as a replacement. I never see technology as a replacement. I see it as an assistant, right? It helps us to do our job better. It helps us to find our answers better. Like years ago, I remember going to the library, right, and reading texts in order to retrieve information and do research. And then Google appeared. Right? It didn't replace me. It just made my job much easier. I had wider access to information by use of technology. And ChatGPT is just another major leap in that direction. So instead of, spending hours looking into entries from Google to extract things we want, or spending hours doing something that could be done in a few minutes, right? ChatGPT would just make things easier to retrieve information, right? So I see it as a tool. I see it as a very productive tool that still needs a lot of work to be improved. It's nothing to be feared of, right? Even in terms of plagiarism, we can get over that. We can use AI to detect plagiarism from ChatGPT. That's not a problem. But again, if you want to design a website, rather than spending hours doing that, you can do it much easier now. If you want to write a code to do some task, again, it can assist you. So I see it as the invention of the calculator, for example, rather than by doing things by hand, spending long time doing them. We're going to learn how to use this tool in a productive way. That's why I personally encourage people to use it, to learn how to use it productively, and it's not an easy process because there's something called prompt engineering. It's not easy to extract what you need from ChatGPT. So you need a lot of trial in order to retrieve exactly what you need. So it's kind of fun to play around with that and go ahead and do it, and nothing to be scared of. So technology, whenever something new in the technology space, appears, people are scared. They are scared of adoption. They're scared of the unknown. But once you master it, once you integrate it in your work, you start to really enjoy it, and it becomes actually an indispensable part of your life. Imagine your life without WhatsApp, right? Imagine your life without your phone. or
without Zoom, without Zoom, right?
Without Zoom, exactly. So it can make our lives much easier, and I see it as a wonderful, invention, and it will spark many other inventions. So the ChatGPT is an example of a natural language processing model, but out of this, right now, Google is investing I think billions of dollars in order to come up with a similar model. It spread out the competition. So now a lot of people are spending in order to come up with even better technology. And very soon we're going to see a lot of other things. And one example that I mentioned in my presentation is a chatbot. So you can talk to an application, tell it whatever you need. Right. So this breaks down education barriers. For example, people who cannot really write or read, they can only talk to the app, and the app can guide them by speaking back, right? So this can actually be a big help to a lot of minorities, maybe uneducated women, maybe right. Perhaps it can also assist in the education of children. I can think of a million of possibilities where this can actually help humanity to go forward and to overcome a lot of the problems that we currently have.
Thank you, Manal. I'm going to put in the last question to sort of synthesize a few questions here and maybe to zoom out and link to our larger network, the A+ network, because there are several questions about the context of MENA, developing countries, Egypt, India, driverless cars in Egypt, or I just want to zoom out and talk about what we are doing here within the A+ Alliance and what it means for MENA. Just looking at the context specific, how can we do more in MENA as feminist AI hub and network, and put all of this together, the suitability of all of this in MENA? What can we do to take this further? How do we contextualize everything that we talked about in MENA? Where are we from all of this?
Well, first of all, and number one, in my perspective, we have the lack of skills, right? And this is the first thing. If you don't know the technology, that's a major gap. We cannot, not adopt. We cannot use it for our own sake and not, innovate. So the first thing that we need to bridge and fill up is the capacity gap, knowledge gap, the education gap, lack of skill, especially for women. In STEM in general, there's a big gender gap in STEM fields. When it comes to AI, the gender gap is even much bigger. And as we said, the main bias in AI systems lies in both the data and the design due to the lack of representation. So we need to have more voices of women at the table, understanding, conceptualizing, inventing technology that benefit them, right? So if I am an inventor, I'll start thinking to myself what I need. Right? What are my needs? So I'm going to invent something to satisfy my needs. If you have more women inventors, more women scientists, researchers who understand this technology, they will be able to come up with applications that satisfy our needs from females or other groups' perspective. So,
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, and number two would be data. As you mentioned, we have a lack of data. First of all, because we have a big community, which is, you called it an informal community, which is not included in the formal statistics. So we need to have perhaps come up platforms in order to aggregate data. So come up with platforms where we can reach a wide percentage of people and accordingly gather data for our sake. Perhaps we can have also data sharing platforms where if you are a researcher, you have a particular data set, you go and share this data set for others to use. And perhaps in the MENA region, there could be a platform for data sharing among governments and different communities in the region, because we all share the same, perhaps problems, similar culture, similar environment. So we definitely need, data sharing among us will help us invent better technology that suits our needs.
Thank you, Manal. I think this very much aligns with what we try, what we work towards at Access to Knowledge for Development Center through this wonderful feminist AI network, but also in addition to through our developing and MENA AI data and responsible data and AI observatory, where we're launching that very soon, and you will know, once we get that done, because we're trying to bring in anything and everything that's being done in the area of data and AI for inclusion and for development in the region. But going back to our activities within the Fa+ir network, the A+ Alliance, I think what you said touches a very sensitive chord. It's very, very important to continue to mobilize the capacities that exist, to develop new capacity, but also to bring together the capacities that are working in this area, which is what we're trying to do through this call for proposals, and building and expanding a network of interested constituencies, women and men who are interested and who work with us towards bringing that message through, organically developed data, homegrown data sets that are suitable, that are context specific to our part of the world, that are put through responsible algorithms, responsible systems that actually bring out beneficial solutions for inclusion and for development, which is really the message of the Feminist AI network. And there are tons of questions. We are out of time. The conversation is wonderful. I myself have learned and continue to learn from you, Manal, and from everyone on this panel and on the screen and participating. So what remains for me is really, a great thank you, Manal, and just a round of applause for a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you also to Nadine, my co-panelists on this session, and Khadija and our team for all the wonderful preparations that they have done at the Access to Knowledge for Development Center. I thank my colleagues, the Fa+ir A+ Alliance, who are here also with us. I understand Caitlin and Suraj is here. So thank you, and thanks to wonderful attendees, some of whom are our students, but also the rest of our guests. Thank you very much. I have tried to address all the questions. Please forgive me if we haven't, but if they're coming from students, we will address them in class. Otherwise, we will continue the conversation, all of us. And please continue to connect with us on email. And please note the link to the A+ Alliance. I'm sorry, the video, we had a technical glitch. Khadija kindly repost that. And we have the emails, and continue to communicate with us. And if you have any unanswered questions, let's continue the conversation over email. Thank you also very much for being here. Have a wonderful afternoon, evening, day, until we meet again. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Najla, and everybody.
مع السلامة. شكرا منال. ألف شكر. Wonderful presentation. Thank you
my pleasure. Always my pleasure.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.